I would like to call this Committee of the Whole Workshop meeting of May 7th, 2025 to order. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sandra Easton, Mayor and Chair of the Committee of the Whole Workshop. Members of Council, members of the committee are in attendance in person and remotely. In person, we have Councillor Timmers, Councillor Pachariva, Councillor Reimer, Councillor Mikulik, and Councillor Regima. So we have quorum, Madam Clerk.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you.
Councillor Murray will be joining us remotely. Councillor Russell and Councillor Brunei have sent their regrets. We have staff in attendance in person and remotely. Councillors, are there any declarations of interest? There being none, are there any, we will now look at our regular agenda, and we're considering item 4.1, Report LS 04-25, regarding an overview of strong mayor powers. The Chief Administrative Officer, Mike Kirkopoulos, will provide introductory comments. Mr. Kirkopoulos, please go ahead. Councillor Mikulik.
Thank you very much. Through you to the clerk, just with respect to this agenda item and how we're discussing this in a committee of the whole format that's a workshop, I'm just wondering, why wouldn't we have had this as a council item? Because I ask that because I wonder, like, where would members of the public have an opportunity to delegate publicly should they wish to do so, if we're doing it in this way?
Councillor Mikulik, we are on an agenda item, and I have already announced that the CAO is going to be providing us an overview. If he has not included that, I will ask him to do that so that we can move on with the agenda as it's been published.
I had my mic on. I had my call signal on when you announced the agenda.
It has nothing to do with whether you had your call signal on. I would like to move on with the agenda and ask that question be addressed.
We
by
can
the
do that.
CAO.
We can do that as well.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Okay, Mr. Kirkopoulos, please go ahead.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to members of council. So I do have some opening comments I want to make, and following that, I can attempt to do my best to answer that particular question. I do want to thank members of council for making the time to participate this evening. I look forward to a very robust and healthy conversation. As many of you know, the strong mayor powers were introduced by the province, and they do represent a significant shift in municipal governance here in Ontario. While some elements of it, as we take you through it, you'll see are familiar to you, others introduce new roles, new responsibilities, and authorities, particularly as they relate to the mayor, council, and municipal administration. Our goal today, and we do have a very thorough presentation, is really to take you through the legislative framework, clarify the scope of these tools, and discuss what it means in the context of how we operate here in Lincoln. Importantly, we'll also highlight what hasn't changed, especially the fundamental and foundational importance of strong council-staff relations, and how I, as your CAO, will undertake my role and the importance of working collaboratively in service to our community. This is an opportunity this evening to learn together, to ask questions, and to shape how these changes are applied in a way that reflects our local culture and values. While the legislation provides new tools, how we use them for continued success, at the end of the day, is up to us. Thoughtful application and continued partnership are the two themes that I leave you with in those opening comments. So I thank you, Madam Mayor. Now, I'll start, and if the clerk has anything further to add, by all means, she can chime in. With respect to the councillor's question as to why these are coming in this format versus another format, and is there an opportunity for public engagement and public dialogue, I think we're going to do our best to make sure that the public is informed. But when I was asked this question the other day, and I'll probably share a little bit of that answer, the strong mayor powers are a provincial decision, not a municipal one. This authority was granted directly by the Premier without public consultation or input from municipalities. No local government, or none at least that I know of, asked for this, and no municipality is engaged in public engagement because the province did not create space for it. We're at a point right now where these powers have been bestowed on municipalities. We're not at a point right now where we're asking should they, shouldn't they. This is happening to us, not happening with us. So while I appreciate the idea that the community plays a role, and in this case, the decision was made unilaterally by the province. So the role that I think the community plays is to engage with us, to have conversations, but not to say they like them, they don't like them. If council directs us to do something like that, by all means, I think we can figure out a way to do that. But if folks are unhappy with these sorts of powers, that's something that I think should be shared with your provincial representatives and the province. So I think that's where you channel those, and I would suggest that's where residents channel those concerns appropriate towards the province, where the decision originated. It's an opportunity tonight, absolutely, to have a courageous, very honest conversation about what's in front of you, and I encourage members of council to do that. Tough questions, make thoughtful, informed decisions. So those are my comments, Madam Mayor, and definitely open to any follow-up that the councillor may have.
Thank you very much, CEO Kirkopoulos. And now, do members of committee have any questions? Councillor Majima.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, I've been reading over what was posted, the report, and reading other things in, as you can imagine, in the news, and I know that some municipalities are pushing back and saying, this isn't something that we want, or some of this we like, some of this we don't. So it looks like, from the agenda that we're here to read the clerk's report and to really have an educational session. Do we anticipate sort of coming out of this with an opinion to send back and say, we either like some of this, we don't like some of this, we like all of it, we don't like any of it? Well, I guess it doesn't matter whether we like it or not, but if we're not in favor of parts of it, is that part of what we anticipate coming out of this session with, or do we know?
Okay, Mr. Kirkopoulos, I'm going to turn to you first on all these questions, and you can delegate them accordingly.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, I think some of what the councillor is asking may be covered in the presentation, so I do encourage council to let us maybe get through the presentation, and then we can have more thoughtful and deliberate conversations. And I would suggest we can also have the conversation, depending on where that veers into, are there any directions of council? But I would also suggest, if we start getting into certain areas, how much of the conversation is public versus not public, and I think all those may be answered there. Councillor, at the end of the day, it is council's discretion to determine what you want to do leaving today's meeting. Staff are going to present you a lot of information. We're going to be active participants in this conversation. We're going to do our best to provide you, I think, the expertise that we have in terms of all the investigations and conversations we've had with colleagues and provincial representatives. And so hopefully I've answered a few of those. I know I haven't answered all of your questions, but some of it hopefully comes out once we're done the presentation.
Yeah, that makes sense. And just a further question to that, Madam Mayor. I see on the report date to council May 26th. So this report is going to be coming back to council May 26th. It looks like. Do we know? Is that just sort of standard procedure?
Madam Clerk?
Thanks. through the mayor to the councillor. So it is just standard procedure. So it's an informational report right now to receive and file as information. All of this at workshops are only to receive and file as information. And that's just going to be brought forward in the minutes for the workshop, and then that'll be brought forward for ratification at council.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, no
Thank
problem.
you.
Okay. There being no further questions, I have a motion moved by Councillor Pachariva that council receive report LS-04-25, overview of strong mayor powers for information. And I'll ask the deputy clerk to open the vote.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That vote is now open. Councillor Rajima, may I have your vote? In favor. In favor, thank you. And that carries, thank you.
Thank you very much. That vote is carried, and we move on now to item 5. And we'll consider item 5.1, a motion to consider confidential items. Before I read the motion and we move into closed session, I'd like to explain what will happen for those watching this meeting online. First, there will be a closed.
Madam Mayor, I've just been advised that the presentation is going to be done in open session, so we can proceed with that. And then what we can do is if the conversation delves into going into a closed session, we will upload those motions for council to vote on. But at this time, we will proceed with the presentation in open.
Okay, so for the clarity of any public or any members of council that are watching, this portion is in open.
That is correct. And give me a moment and I'll get the presentation loaded, okay?
Okay,
Thank
thank you
you.
very much. So, we are, just a moment. Madam Clerk, are you presenting this part of the report?
Both the CAO and myself will take council through the presentation, absolutely.
Okay, who's going to speak first?
I believe Mike will open it up, and then we'll take them through.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'd just like to take a moment to recognize that Councillor Murray is now online virtually. Hi, Councillor Murray. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Yes.
So through you, Madam Mayor, to members of council, first let me apologize. I think it was a very last-minute decision in terms of how much of this we present in camera versus out of camera, and I think where we can, we always err on the side of sharing as much information publicly. So, as Julie said, her and I will both be taking you through this particular presentation. The lion's share will be done by Julie. But I do want to take you through a little bit of the objectives and in terms of what we hope to accomplish today. Definitely there's elements that the CAO will speak to in terms of the CAO responsibilities, and then I will come back in at the end and provide some closing comments. So our goal today, as I said in my earlier comments, really is to hopefully give everyone a little bit of a better understanding around the legislative framework, how this was brought forward and what it really means. Explore the comment around provincial priorities. We hear a lot about provincial priorities, and that's why this was brought forward, and the rationale behind the legislation and the tools that are afforded to the municipality, to the mayor, and other identified legislative roles. To review those powers, obviously to discuss with you the implications. The implication for council, the implication for municipal staff, for clerks, for the CAO, and to consider local government's impacts and just what those implementation strategies look like. Where we can, we're going to cite some other examples, how other municipalities have done it. But as you can imagine, with these coming into place at the beginning of May, but being introduced 2 weeks prior to that, everyone's doing things probably a little bit different, but looking to some of the larger municipalities that were granted these permissions back in 2023. So the legislative framework, I won't get into each of these, but as you can see, a number of legislative documents have been considered when the province and the Premier brought forward the Strong Mayor Powers Building Homes Act in 2022, Better Municipal Governance Act also in 2022. Of course, the changes to the Municipal Act, which were governed by considerably. What we heard in terms of the purpose for doing so was to expedite housing development and support provincial priorities. And again, we'll get into a little bit of that later. And to provide enhanced executive authority to mayors in select municipalities at that time. As defined in the OREG, under the Strong Mayor Powers legislation, the designated priorities include building 1.5 million new homes by 2031, constructing and upgrading critical infrastructure which supports that growth. And as you can see, examples there include transit, roads, water and wastewater systems, and broadband, just to name a few. Reducing red tape in development approvals, which can be everything from how we deal with zoning, our permit process, and any other administrative efficiencies, and ensuring long-term economic growth. So very generally, job creation, investment, and creating a competitive business environment. The last comment there speaks again, I think, just generally to the fact that these are fairly broad priorities and subject to interpretation, but really they're focused on affordable housing and other types of issues that we often have talked around at this table, but many municipalities are talking about. So timeline of the rollout. Again, some of this has been happening prior to 2023 in terms of Toronto and Ottawa receiving these powers initially, and then 27 more municipalities as of July 1st of 2023. 18 more were added October 1st of 2023. And on April 9th, last month, the province added 169 more municipalities, making that effective on May 1st, 2025. A key point there was one municipality within the region of Niagara that did not receive it. And as you can see there, they were provided to single and lower tier municipalities with councils of 6 or more members. That one municipality had less than that, 5, and as a result weren't granted these powers.
So I'll take you through the summary of the powers and the duties that have been granted to the mayors across Ontario. Number one, choosing to appoint the municipality's CAO. The province has mandated that and given that power to the mayors. Hiring certain municipal department heads and establishing and reorganizing departments. Creating committees of council, assigning their functions, appointing chairs, vice chairs of committees of council. Keep in mind, questions that have come up regarding that, it has to be comprised of all members of council. So, and I'll get a little bit later into the committees later on in the presentation, but I just wanted you to keep that in mind. Proposing the municipal budget, which would be subject to council amendments and separate head of council veto and council override process, which we will get through in the presentation. Proposing certain municipal bylaws, and what does that look like, and how does it advance a provincial priority, which has been identified in the new regulations, and how council can pass these bylaws and what those votes will look like. Again, we'll walk you through that. Vetoing certain bylaws if the head of council is of the opinion that all or part of the bylaw could potentially interfere or advance or interfere with a provincial priority. Bringing forward matters for council consideration if the head of council is of the opinion that it could potentially advance the priority. So, a question that's come up, can we just deny it? Can we revoke it? You can't. So it has been provincially mandated, and the short answer is no. Municipalities don't have the authority to opt in or out of the strong mayor powers. These powers are granted to the head of council by the province of Ontario. Only the provincial government can amend or revoke these powers by repealing, amending the enabling legislation or regulation, and removing the municipality from the list of those covered by the strong mayor provisions. Strong mayor powers of authority. So the political considerations, considering what we just heard, municipal councils can pass a resolution requesting the province to revoke the powers, but such a request is non-binding. So you might have seen those come through. Municipal world, you've probably seen all those letters that, some municipalities have been sending, and that's what you're seeing, but they're non-binding. They're just requesting that the province take them back. The province's intent in granting these powers is to advance provincial priorities, as we've heard time and time again. And revocation would generally require a policy shift, but that's at the provincial level. It's not at the local level. What are the limitations of strong mayor powers? So council can override a veto with a 2/3 vote. Override veto must occur within 21 days of the veto being issued. You're going to hear a lot of timelines being associated with this. And so, if you're not clear after what these timelines really mean, clerks will be providing a reference guide to council and the mayor, as well as CLT. So that will be coming, because I know it's a lot to take in tonight. I'm just going to walk you through what the legislative process is, okay? If successful, the bylaw proceeds as originally passed, limited to areas identified in the regulations, such as, for example, housing and infrastructure. It's still accountable under the Municipal Act and Conflict of Interest Act. The mayoral veto power. Under strong mayor powers, the mayor may veto a bylaw passed by council if it is believed to advance or interfere with a prescribed provincial priority. Example, housing, transit, infrastructure. And we went through that list of what those priorities are. A veto must include a written explanation referencing the relevant provincial priority, as defined in the OREG 580. To elaborate on the mayoral veto power, head of council can veto any bylaw enacted under the Municipal Act, the Planning Act, and Section 2 of the Development Charges Act if the head is of the opinion that any bylaw potentially interferes with a provincial priority. Notice to be provided to council within 2 days of the vote. The veto must be in writing and provide written reasons within 14 days of a council meeting. Council can override the head of council's veto by 2/3 vote of council within 21 days or the prescribed date that the clerk provides notice of the mayor's veto. Head of council is entitled to vote on an override of veto. A veto power does not apply to bylaws under Section 289 and 290 of the Municipal Act. Those are budget bylaws, which are separate powers, and we will go through what those are, okay? So those don't apply here. A bylaw enactment power, and so what does that mean? Despite the municipality's procedure bylaw, so whatever we have set out, the head of council, mayor, is of the opinion that a proposed bylaw under the Municipal Act, Planning Act, or Section 2 of the Development Charges could potentially advance a prescribed provincial priority. The following applies. The mayor may propose the bylaw directly, even if it's in contrary to the usual procedural rules that we've all been used to over the years. The council vote requirement. The bylaw may be enacted if passed by more than 1/3 of votes on council. So what's 1/3? So for an example, on a 7-member council, 3 members voting in favor plus the mayor's vote would constitute more than 1/3. The mayor's right to vote. So this has also come up in question. So the mayor is entitled to vote on this bylaw. And that means 1/3 of council plus the mayor's vote can result in the bylaw being passed under these special provisions.
Even though the process for passing the bylaw may be expedited or altered by strong mayor powers, it does not remove or limit appeal rights under the applicable legislation, like the Planning Act. So for instance, if there was an application for residential units, and I'm not saying, Mayor Easton, you would do this, but in the event that a head of council just says, no, sorry, I don't want residential, I want to see strictly commercial, that applicant still has appeal rights to go to the Land Tribunal OLT. Okay? Procedural process for vetoes and overrides. So what safeguards do we have in place? Vetoes and override votes must be recorded in council minutes and made public. The veto power cannot be used arbitrarily. It must be tied to specific regulated priorities that are outlined in the legislation. Promotes checks and balances between the mayor and council. So the governance impacts of strong mayor powers. Let me just go back to my slides. I'm going to hand this over to the CAO because I think you are up next.
So governance and impacts of strong mayor powers. Evolving power dynamics. Obviously, this is going to shift a little bit of the traditional roles between mayor, council, and the administration. There is a potential where that does at times or could create a misalignment or tension in decision-making if roles and responsibilities are not clearly defined and ultimately, like many, delegated appropriately. As I said, we can get a little bit more into that. The role of the CAO and clerk. Both will remain and if in a lot of ways become probably more important to navigate the evolving reporting structures while maintaining neutrality and institutional continuity. Emphasis on preserving the professional, nonpartisan role of senior administration. And of course, not the first time we've talked to you about the council staff relations policy, but this becomes even more important. It reinforces mutual respect, accountability, and role clarity under this new governance model, and really serves as that tool and that foundation to look at how we behave and how decision-making occurs in this changed context.
Thanks, Mike. So the policy and procedural updates, if required. Establish new templates and SOPs, so clerk staff have already been on top of that. So we already have our templates already prepared, as well as the website as council was communicated with. And whenever there is a direction or decision made, those templates are all ready to have the mayor put what she wants on that, and then we communicate that to council and that gets updated. So our templates are already updated. Update the procedural bylaw and committee policies if required. Revise budget process and amendment rules. Adjust organizational structure and reporting lines. Update delegation of authority framework. Establish communication protocols for directives, and providing staff training on a new governance model. Again, it's important to note that if it's required. We're going to move on to the budget. So the strong mayor powers provide the head of council the responsibility to prepare and propose the municipal budget on or before February the 1st of each year, which would be subject to council amendments and provides a process to veto and council to override. The mayor is responsible for maintaining the financial integrity of the municipality and promote and uphold municipal goals and responsibilities. That's no change from how we've been operating all along. Outside the strong mayor framework, municipal councils may continue to exercise powers of the municipality that relate or impact the municipality's spending. So council is still well within their rights to uphold those. It is up to each municipality to define how strong mayor and council powers work together based on local needs and practices. I would say that if there's anything that I have heard along the way since 2023, communication and collaboration is key. And we're going to get through that in a little bit later in the slides. But working together, keeping your residents informed, making sure that their needs are being brought to this table, that hasn't changed. Budget process and statutory timelines. There's 3 statutory time periods under the Strong Mayor legislation that relate to the budget process. So there's an amendment period, 30 days from when the budget is proposed by the mayor. There's a veto period, 10 days where the mayor may consider vetoing the amendments made during the amendment period that's been brought forward. Override period, 15 days where council may choose to meet to try to override one or more of the mayor's vetoes. That requires 2/3 supermajority required to override. The budget process up to 30-day amendment period. Members of council must submit amendments in writing to the clerk to be published on the agenda. Amendment forms will be sent to council with details on their due dates prior to the meeting. All meetings will be canceled if no amendments are submitted for the agenda. Each amendment will be considered individually. I would say that when speaking to other clerks across Ontario that have already been through this process, it is of the opinion that this is a very transparent and accountable process that they have found. There was some real definite learnings to be had early on in the process, but I would say that the amendments in writing, it's not dissimilar to the amendments that you make at this table. It just means that you yourselves are making these amendments in writing. The budget adoption process. If no amendments are approved, the budget is deemed approved. There is no motion to approve the budget as presented or amended. The veto period. The veto period deadline communicating a veto. The mayor is required to create a mayoral decision to specify which amendments are being vetoed. The mayoral decision is to be circulated to each member of council, and the clerk will be posted to the webpage on the Town of Lincoln's website. The budget adoption. There's no motion to approve the budget. If the mayor does not exercise a veto power, the budget is deemed adopted with each of the amendments approved by council during the amendment period. I would say that also the feedback from around Ontario is that the budget process, it does have shorter timelines. We don't see it drawn out like we have from September to December. It's actually shortened the budget process, but in actual fact, because those amendments or anything like that have to be made in writing, it's still a public process. The override period of 15 days. Overrides to vetoed amendments can be considered at an override due date meeting. Members of council must submit overrides in writing to the clerk to be published on the agenda. Override forms will be sent to council with details on due dates prior to the date of the meeting, as we just covered. If 2/3 of the members of council vote to override a veto, the budget is deemed adopted with that amendment. If council does not approve an override, the budget is deemed adopted without the amendment. All meetings will be canceled if no vetoes are made and no overrides are requested. Here's just a little flow chart just to kind of put this into perspective, because it's kind of hard when you're talking about it, but when you see it visually, it might be better to describe. So you begin with the mayor presents the budget. Amendment period begins, 30 days. The clock starts. Veto period, 10 days. The override period, 15 days. Here's a different example of a flow chart. Head of council provides proposed budget to council. Council passes resolution to make amendments to the budget within 30 days. If yes, mayor exercises veto on council amendment within 10 days. If yes, council overrides mayor's veto on amendments. 2/3 vote within 15 days. If yes, you'll see the blue box on the bottom. Budget is deemed adopted with inclusion of amendments provided by council. If no, if you go back up to the other box on the right-hand side, budget is deemed adopted as provided by mayor. Examples of budget under strong mayor power. So when doing this, pulled some examples just to show you that how others have done it over the course of the couple of years that it's been in place. I won't go through each example, but for instance, Toronto, both times the mayor prepared the budget based on draft, that staff budget for consideration by council, to which was subject to public consultation. So they still decided to do that. Ottawa, the city manager, worked with the mayor to develop the draft budget in alignment with the approved direction, consulting councillors during the preparation. As I said before, communication is key. Various public consultations were held, delegations heard before going to council for consideration. The key findings, it appears that staff are still integral into the process of preparation, and that has been heard loud and clear. And when you are in these forums at AMCTO, that does appear to be the case with the clerks and the treasurers. Largely seen that mayors directed staff to prepare the budget, while a smaller amount was seen that the mayor or mayor's office prepared the budget, or two directed their budget committee to prepare the budget. Committees of council. So I know this question has come up, and what does this mean? What does this mean for the chairs? What does this mean for our local boards, or what does this mean for our advisory boards? And so I do want to point out that as enabled by the OREG 530-22 and the Municipal Act, it was given the power to the mayor to establish or dissolve committees. The mayor has the authority to create or dissolve committees of council at their discretion. The committees must be composed entirely of members of council, so no public appointees or staff members unless otherwise permitted by bylaw, meaning local boards are not prescribed. And I would say that our advisory committees you have 2 members of council on them, but the majority is citizens. These don't apply. This applies to our standing committees. So our committee of the whole, our workshop, right now, our budget. Those are all comprised of council, okay? So I just wanted to make that clear because that has been something of a bit of a confusion on some parts in the conversations that have happened as of late. Appointing chairs and vice chairs. The mayor appoints the chair and the vice chair of each committee. This allows the mayor to set the agenda, influence the direction of the committee work through leadership appointments. So right now, that power sits with the mayor. Assigning committee functions. The mayor determines the mandate, functions, policy areas assigned to each of the committees. So that means that right now we have general business and finance, we have community service and infrastructure, and we've got planning and economic development. Right now, that sits as is. There could be changes, but that hasn't been discussed. The power enables alignment of committee work with provincial priorities or the mayor's strategic direction for the municipality. I'll hand this off to Mike.
This next section speaks to the role of the CAO in terms of administration of senior leadership and the organizational structure. Under the Strong Mayor Powers framework, mayors have been granted the authority to appoint and dismiss the chief administrative officer. Notwithstanding this, there is a growing recognition of the critical role that CAOs play in ensuring professional, stable, and an accountable municipal administration. Some of the emerging best practices that we're seeing, definitely within the last year, as it relates to 2 points here, a little more than half of Ontario mayors have retained this appointment authority. However, there is a notable, and I would suggest a deliberate trend that we're seeing amongst the vast majority towards delegating staff powers in terms of the administration of the organization back to the CAO role, particularly around organizational structure, human resources staffing, and really that's meant to reflect the confidence in the senior leadership of the organization. CAO-led organizational oversight. The CAO is widely regarded as the appropriate municipal lead to manage that internal staffing responsibility and those organizational matters, in line with the principle of political administrative separation. Many delegations of Strong Mayor Powers explicitly reaffirm that authority in overseeing departmental organization, recruitment and appointment of staff, and the operational decision-making and implementation of council priorities. In some cases, and I would suggest a lot of this happens already with committee chairs and members of council, including the mayor, that consultation with the mayor does occur when we think about high-profile roles. Definitely as these powers are meant to move forward provincial priorities, things like infrastructure, planning, and growth. Definitely would be those types of roles. But final accountability remains with the CAO. Protection of statutory roles. There are some statutory positions that remain outside of strong mayor powers if the mayor was to retain those administrative powers. And they include the clerk, treasurer, integrity commissioner, fire chief, the chief building official, reinforcing the need for independent, nonpartisan administrative functions that are best supported by CAO oversight.
So I'll take you through what the difference is between a mayoral decision and a directive process. So the decisions are in accordance with the regulation that's prescribed. So if the mayor decides to delegate the use of power or to outline the use of power where the authority comes from, and it could be a decision made in writing to the council, but made to the clerk and also made available to the public. So how they are using those powers, okay? So that's a decision. The directive is a little bit different. So that carries out duties related to the exercise of the power and the performance of the duty. So it could be that a written mayoral directive is required to be made in writing to the CAO and the clerk. And that could be that the mayor is directing staff to undertake some research to, prepare a report, to provide to council to outline a provincial priority. There is some inconsistency by municipalities that we have found, for example, what format, what level of detail, the information included in those decisions and directives, and in my sake, I will, work very closely with the mayor. The mayor will work very closely with me to develop a model that's transparent and accountable as much as possible, and directed by legislation. So any kind of communication that we can have with council, that will be had. Anything that is to be made public, that will be done. That's always been my case. You know that I'm very open and transparent, and that's one thing that I pride ourselves on, and that will not change. Just some examples of what we've seen in the last year. So Guelph in early of 2024, mayor issued direction to prepare the 2025 budget. And in July, the mayor also provided direction to staff to present a 2024-2027 multi-year budget. Our neighbors, St. Catharines, Mayor Cisco used strong mayor powers to direct staff to prioritize development applications and get them moving faster. He instructed the CAO to adopt a housing-focused approach to the administration. In Hamilton, Mayor vetoed City Council decision that would have prevented converting a two-surface parking lot downtown Stony Creek into affordable housing, and the mayor invoked strong mayor powers to clear the way for the development, which is a provincial priority. Those are just some examples to give you an understanding of what those decisions and what those directives could look like. I'll hand it over to Mike.
So in closing, members of council, and you've heard it, I think, peppered throughout the presentation, communication and collaboration remains essential across the various roles, council, the mayor, CAO, and staff, to ensure that effective decision-making continues. Because at the end of the day, I think I can be as bold as to say strong mayor powers do represent a bit of a shift in municipal governance and how things are going to function. And so that collaboration will be important. Clear and consistent communication, as you've heard, is critical to keep council, staff, and the public informed. Julie's given you that commitment. I can give you that commitment on behalf of the organization as well, that communication will remain a tenet and paramount to how I continue to administer the functions of my role. Proactive policies, training, and relationship building are vital to a smooth transition. This is the first step in that. And as Julie highlighted, the clerk will develop and her team and distribute a reference manual to all members of council for ongoing guidance. Goes without saying, the mayor can make any changes to the directives issued or delegated at any time. Anything she delegates can be undelegated in terms of the legislation, or vice versa. Decision-making and communication flow. The mayor will make decisions under the strong mayor powers moving forward, and decisions will be communicated by the clerk and CAO in a timely manner. And as we've said, but maybe not said enough, and I'll end with that fine point, we will formally ensure that council's made aware and that transparency and alignment to council priorities remains at the paramount of anything we do in terms of communication flow. So definitely open to any questions council may have. I will remind members of council, if we veer into any sort of matters that speak to identifiable individuals or those sorts of things, those are things that we would want to probably go into camera for. But some general comments, questions, clarification, I think we're more than able to answer those publicly as well.
All right, councilors, we can start a queue, and we'll have the staff answer any questions. Councilor Reimer.
Thank you, Mayor Eason. Thank you very much, Mike and Julie and staff, for that report. That answered a couple of questions already. But I have a couple here, if I may, Mayor Eason, direct them to Mike or Julie. This document, so the strong mayor powers by itself, is it a document that's done, finished, and there's no more? Or do you think that there's a precursor to something else that will come from the province? And I'm thinking more towards, realignment of municipalities or structuring them in such a way that this is a precursor to that, if you follow my mindset. Is this the start of something as opposed to a document by itself that's finished?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So I would say, so there's two parts to that question, Councillor. Do I think this is a precursor to something or a further decision as it relates to governance otherwise? I would say the answer to that is no. Do I think the province is finished with potentially making changes to how municipalities structure, municipal decision-making, policy decisions, like we've had, I would suggest, over the last number of years, everything from planning responsibilities to what we have in front of you today? I would say that part's probably not done, but is one a precursor to the other? I lean to no, but do I see more potential policy changes from the province that impact municipalities? Yes.
Thank you. One more question, if I may, Mayor Easton. Just a clarification on the budget approval. And I know, Julie, you had talked about the process. Is it strictly, it's a timed out, the graph that she had talked about with the days depending on vetoes and not vetoes and all that, all those kind of decisions, but is it timed out and adopted at the end of that period, or is it related to a meeting we have? I know it's more of a clarification, but it's not something at the end of this meeting the budget is adopted, or is it to the time, is it the period that times out? So basically 45 days from the day you start the budget process and all those things happen, that's when it's adopted. So, like 5 o'clock on a business, that's when it is. It's not related to a meeting.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Reimer. So I think, Councillor, I'll again try to answer that two ways. Technically, I think you're right. There are some timelines that are associated, and when those timelines are complete, the budget is considered approved. That said, I would suggest to you that I think what a lot of every municipality is doing it slightly different. So I think it's going to be a work in progress. There's going to be a learning that occurs for all of us. Some municipalities have kept committees in place, budget committees, like our friends in St. Catharines. Others have not. So I think as we move through the process, we're going to have to come back to you on that, obviously in consultation with the mayor, our treasurer, other senior staff, and determine what's the best process that we think fits for the town of Lincoln.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor Easton.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship, and through you to Mike and Julie, thank you very much for the presentation. Same kind of line of questioning that Councillor Reimer had. Like, is there another shoe to drop? Like, we saw the policy statement yesterday from AMO about municipal codes of conduct. So we know before there was no mechanism to remove unruly members of council, or there was no means to sanction them, or there was no means to take away some of the benefits they had, being a chair or a vice chair or a deputy mayor. Do you think that these might come from that, reading between the lines? You can kind of see it, right? So if the mayor can appoint a chair and a vice chair, if someone isn't towing the company line like they should be, right? Is this a mechanism that it can be done? Because that was one of the issues that's gone on, since, 10 years ago with malfeasance at the region and things like that. So just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Just a moment, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to ask everybody to be very careful what they're talking about right now. Doesn't matter who you're referring to, be very careful. Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Chair. Or, yes, certainly, Mr. CAO.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. I'll probably pick up on what the mayor just said there. I think the province would be very careful to institute something like that. So do I think, again, there's a causal or connected relationship with those two? I don't. I think it's always good to look at one's code of conduct. A lot of the feedback through AMO and other agencies that the province referred to on codes of conduct were that they need to be strengthened. But do I think the province will go as far as to grant those sorts of powers that you referenced? I would think it would be ill-advised, but I'm not advising the province.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Second question, if I may. Now, on slide number 7, it says, can a municipality revoke the strong mayor powers? The answer is no. But are you able to modify them? And I wanted to ask the question, like various other municipalities in Niagara, so the, the issue around human resources. Some of them, and I was wondering if you might have a number, have left that power within the hands of the CAO, knowing that it's not. In most cases, it's not the head of council's area of expertise, right? So that's why we have department heads in place. So just curious if we know where that is and if like that's something, we can go through kind of step by step and if others are doing it that way.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Councillor, I think to answer your specific question, and I go back to slide 7, can you revoke them? No. Can the mayor choose to delegate some of those authorities? And you referenced human resources, so the administration of the staff of the organization. I could be as bold or as forward to suggest the mayor, and I've had those types of conversations already. And so those things I anticipate happening. That's not necessarily altering the legislation. That is simply the mayor exercising, at this particular point in time, in this case, her responsibilities or her duties to delegate those responsibilities. So can council and the mayor work within the legislation to do things that fit the town of Lincoln and fit where the mayor wants to go? Absolutely.
Okay.
But you can't, revoke part of it, change part of it.
No.
If you're looking to change it specifically. But the mayor can choose, to delegate. And as I said, she can choose to undelegate as well.
Okay. You know what? I don't know if I do or not. So I'm gonna come out and I'm gonna think.
Okay, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. Okay, Councillor Mikulik.
I'm always thinking. Thank you very much, Mayor. Through you to Mike. Thank you for the presentation. I especially liked chart 21 with that flow chart. I thought that was pretty good, explains a lot as far as process goes, and I personally like flow charts. That said, I think these powers are pretty powerful, excuse the pun, but And I think some municipalities may benefit from them should they be part of a dysfunctional municipality. It's just, in our case, we're being handed them, whether we like them or not. And, we're going to do the best we can with them to make sure that we, take advantage of them to the best of our ability. So, question I have to you is, right now, do you think there's anything that any way we could have benefited in the past from these sorts of powers that we now have that perhaps we could have benefited from had we had them, say, in the last 4 years?
Go ahead, Mr. CAO.
Through you, Madam Mayor, it definitely a very political question, Councillor, and I get, why you're asking it. I would say I think that the town of Lincoln, to your point, and both the council and the administration of the town of Lincoln function well as it relates to provincial priorities and moving these provincial priorities and council strategic priorities forward. So do I think this in any way changes what we're doing? No, it doesn't. Not every municipality is in a similar situation as the town of Lincoln, where I think we've got that strategic and strong alignment. And so I think, when the province is looking at why they move or why they bring something forward that takes into account ourselves and 168 other municipalities, they look at it in its totality. But I would, to go back to your initial question, do I think this would have helped us move anything forward per se? I think we make very thoughtful, deliberate and have strong deliberations over projects. A lot of them are around the development side. Have we seen where some projects, I think we look at maybe lowering heights and those sorts of things, which means we take away affordable housing or others, not to name a particular project, but that's happened in the past. That came from a negotiation. Does something like this change that? Or would it have changed it? I don't know. At the end of the day, I think we reached a reasonable and appropriate solution. Could we have reached something different if strong mayor powers, as an example, or strong mayor tools were in place? Maybe, but I would say on the vast majority, if not all things, we're a council and administration that functions well.
Thank you, and that's what I thought. I mean, we're under, with Director Bruder telling us that we have to approve these applications in a timely manner. Like, we always feel like we have to make these decisions rather quickly, and we can't just fool around and sit on the fence and, just delay things just for the sake of being political, right? So that's what I thought. Now, next couple of questions I'm going to ask, and they're going to relate to the CAO and to the mayor, but they relate to every municipality in Ontario. So, through you, Mayor, to our CAO, like, what happens, the mayor is given strong powers, that position is given strong powers. God forbid, the mayor should vacate the office in some sort of way. I don't know, in some sort of way. What do those strong mayor powers carry forward? And to who would they carry forward to? The deputy mayor, or how does that look?
So the powers are only given to the head of council. If I understand your question correctly, I'll try to answer it, and if I don't, then just clarify for me. Should the mayor vacate her seat, we are without a member of council. That triggers an election. That triggers a by-election, and that role needs to be filled. So right now, it doesn't trigger a deputy mayor, okay? So that doesn't happen, and you would actually have to, it will trigger a by-election.
Okay.
Okay?
I just
Does
wanted to-
that
Yeah, I
answer
just
your
wanted to
question?
clarify that it couldn't be the deputy mayor sitting in as
No.
acting mayor and all of a sudden having those powers that,
No, the legislation is silent. So
Okay.
right now, it's to the head of council. It doesn't go to a deputy mayor at any time,
okay,
okay?
I'm just clarifying.
That's okay.
Another question I have with respect to, we talk about, through you, Mayor, too, and again, not our CAO, but another CAO, another town. Somebody gets elected, and they're not sure if they really care much for the CAO, and this person is a business, and this hypothetical, like this person is a business person, knows how to kind of hire and fire people. Can that CAO be put to a different position? We're not going to fire you, but we're going to make you, director of, something. Can that happen? How does that look when we talk organizational changes? What? It's possible. No?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, I mean, in a lot of these sorts of human resource matters, councillor, you need, two willing parties. But I would suggest, I think the easiest answer for you is no. One couldn't negotiate, okay, we're going to make you the director of Public Works, as an example. I love David,
Yeah.
but, a new CAO comes in and says, we're going to make you the director of Public Works, and that's where we're going to put you. And I'm going to fire you as this and put you in as that. I think the simple answer is no. That's not necessarily happening.
Okay, and I ask that because it's CAOs, they have a tough life. I think they have a tough life because they can come and go, and it doesn't, it could be either the council right now, we'd be 9 of us with this council, but there's usually a contract that has to be bought out, and if you don't want to pay out that contract, you can just say, well, let's just make things a little bit tougher. Let's test our CAO and see if he's willing to take on a different position. Not our CAO, but like just any CAO in any municipality. But I'm not sure if this is talked about amongst other CAOs or amongst other councils. I've not talked to him. So
Was your question,
that was,
is it possible to give the CAO an alternate job of less authority? Is that the question?
I believe it is,
Okay.
but
So through you, Madam Mayor, is this sort of stuff talked about among CAOs? Absolutely, Councillor. I can answer that question, I think, easily and unequivocally. You get into certain HR matters like constructive dismissal and other sort of contractual items that wouldn't allow your suggestion really to be palatable. And so you are then into that conversation around a separation of duties and a separation of ways, which does involve some contractual issues, severance, and so forth.
okay. And then just one more question. So when we talk about the mayor vetoing bylaws, potentially speaking, like, a mayor could say, our DC charges are way too high. We're going to get more development if we lower our DC charges. So I'm going to pass a bylaw that's going to reduce our DC charges to get more development happening or occurring. And I'm guessing that this is possible. This is a real fact that can happen. Can that happen with specific developments, specific times, specific instances, or is it a broad-based sort of approach? And if so, like, would that be for the public to be aware of?
So through you, Madam Mayor, to the council, so they're always going to be aware of it. Councillor, I'll start from the bottom and maybe work back to the first question. They're always going to be aware of it because any sort of directive decision needs to be communicated and communicated on a webpage. Julie sent an email to members of council on May 1st, highlighting that that's available now, and it is legislated and mandated that we have that information there, and that any sorts of directives and decisions are placed on that. So I think that's the answer maybe to the last part of your question. Can your example, the one you used, occur? Absolutely it can. And it could be on one project, not all projects. And so I think, but those are the cautions that I think all mayors, in working very closely with senior staff, will look at when they make these sorts of directives. And I would suggest that a lot of the ones that have been made already do happen in conversation, in collaboration with both council and senior staff when decisions like that are made. But using your illustrative example, things like that can occur, and they can occur on set projects, not just en masse, but can occur both ways.
Okay.
But if you look at it, you need to tie it back to provincial priorities. You need to tie it back to something that is of a priority and connects back.
Okay, I just want to clarify, because each development has its own bylaw to authorize so-and-so and so-and-so. So I just want to clarify that there's different ways of doing that, or there's different possibilities, but no matter what the case, they are made public as
That's
far as
correct.
the details of those.
To
Okay,
you, Madam
thank you,
Mayor.
that's all
Yeah.
for now.
Councillor Timmers.
Thank you, Mayor Easton. Through you to our CAO and our clerk, thank you very much for the presentation. You know, when I look at page 4, our provincial priorities, that, you know, this is to help bring, you know, meet those priorities. I feel like our municipality is doing a very good job in meeting those priorities. There's a lot here. This is definitely a learning curve. And I don't know how far we're going to go with our questioning tonight, but I'm going to keep it just very basic. Going through the list of all of the new powers, and I know at the very bottom it said the mayor may choose to delegate these special powers and duties. So I've seen in a local municipality, you know, they've gone public with what the mayor is choosing to delegate to staff. And I'm not quite sure how we get to that point, if you can even answer that. Are we working towards that in another meeting, or how do, I know it lays with the mayor, but I'm just wondering,
Go ahead, Mr.
where are we
CEO.
with that?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll take the liberty of maybe beginning that answer, and if you have anything you want to chime in. Through you, Madam Mayor, to the council, so we aren't working towards another meeting where these decisions occur by consensus or by vote.
No, I get that.
So it really is a decision of the mayor, and I guess that's my, without overcomplicating my answer,
Okay.
and maybe going on, that would be communicated to council though. So, as I said, should the mayor decide to look at the human resource functions of the organization and say, I'll be delegating this back to the CAO in any municipality, that occurs, put on the website, and communicated to members of council.
Okay. Okay, I think that was pretty much the answer I expected to hear, but I wanted to put that out, so. And as far as, you know, we've talked a lot about the budget. To me, it's still unclear how that process is going to play out. Will we be having less meetings? Will the process look somewhat the same? I don't know if you can answer that at this point, or I'm a little unclear how it's going to work.
Go ahead.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, maybe. So potentially it will have less meetings, but it really depends on the approach and the focus and you know, I think the conversation that the mayor has with members of council and then direct senior staff to undertake in. I would suggest, and I believe, that we will continue to meet, priorities will be shared, important projects will be shared and come forward, there will be a semblance of engagement, and then some direction will be provided to staff, and we will be in front of you. There are some timelines we're working with, which I think change the process, and as you heard, vetoes, non-vetoes, what that looks like, what votes look like, but I suspect we're going to have a very thorough and well thought out engagement, as we always have had.
So through you, Mayor, if I could ask another question around the budget. So I know, I've heard a few comments about, you know, the mayor is presenting the budget, and the thought is that the mayor is creating the budget. The mayor is coming up with the budget for the entire municipality. But the mayor is still working with the senior management team, the directors of each department, to form that budget that is coming to council. Do I have that correct, or?
You can start.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. Generally speaking, what you're describing, councillor, is how a lot of municipalities have done it. While the mayor may choose to present or not present,
Okay.
the mayor will provide direction as to the budget, and then staff will work to bring back a budget that resembles and follows that direction. As we always had, there's a lot of work that happens behind the scenes. We often tell council that. Now you're going to see it, I think, really in action. All the work and months of, I think, deliberations and conversations and meetings that we have, we're still going to have those to be able to put a budget in front of the mayor and then subsequently council.
Well, thank you for that clarity, because I know.
But the mayor,
Oh, I'm
wanted to
sorry.
chime in as well.
I'm speaking out of turn, but we needed to hear that.
That answer is quite adequate
Thank you.
for where we're at right now.
Thank you.
I mean, there may be municipalities where the mayor may have been a financial officer in a municipality. I think there are mayors that have different skill sets, and so therefore, they may opt to do something different. So the goal here is we have a good process. We need to continue with that process to make sure that everyone has their input, but at the same time, the head of council now has a responsibility to review the provincial priorities and make sure that they are inserted. If they're not inserted adequately enough, and we feel that we're going to be losing some ground, then we have a discussion about that and see whether or not something needs to be changed. But it ensures that you can't ignore certain things that are important.
Well, that's good. Thank you very much for that. I think that's it for me right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, obviously, we know that change happens and change is inevitable and change is fun, right? Yeah, keep that in mind. So about mayoral veto power, my question is, the language, generally, it seems to suggest or is worded in such a way that, or we seem to glean from this, or first thing we think of is that we assume that the mayor will want to veto a bylaw that doesn't support provincial priorities related to housing in particular, because that's one of the big ones that we're talking about. So I'm wondering, have we heard of any funding or assistance or incentive for the mayor to want to approve a bylaw that results in more housing? I mean, I know that that's one of our goals, but there's always, budgetary problems that come into play when we're making decisions like that. We know that we need more housing within our borders. Question of how to get it done is always on our minds, but money is always a huge thing. How do we create all the infrastructure that's required? So do we know of any proposed ways of making us whole, I guess?
Mr. CAO, do you want to take this or delegate it?
Through you, Madam Mayor, absolutely, I can take it. Not sure yet, Councillor. I think that's what we keep hearing, is that associated alignment to provincial priorities should correlate into additional funding if you're meeting those obligations. I think, again, we do that already, and so it makes our applications far more competitive, and we've seen the success of that. Council has in terms of funding. But has there been anything specifically identified or announced as it relates to veto something to approve a provincial priority like housing, directly resulting in funding, or generally resulting in funding envelopes? Not to our understanding. The clerk did mention to me she thinks something in Burlington where an approval and a mayoral veto and an approval of something did result in some funding being received as a result of that, as long as it aligns to those provincial priorities. So I could see it happening, but there isn't a formal process that's been identified that says if you do X, it potentially yields Y. However, I think if we're aligning to provincial priorities and we need infrastructure funding, for example, makes the case a lot stronger, and it makes it a lot harder for the province to say no to those potential asks.
Thank you. It would be nice if it was really clear. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Pachariva.
Thanks, Your Worship. So just, reading through this, I think there's, and you kind of alluded to it, like there's maybe 3 points that will be clarified at some point. Wanted to get your thoughts on that. So we touched on the HR function. We touched on the budget. And I think one of the other ones that's important is the issue of the CAO itself, right? The CAO has always been council's lone employee. So, reading this, council can override a veto with a 2/3 vote, but I think it's important that is, I don't think you want to get to that. I think that's something that's stated at some point that we will still, that will be one of our roles. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, and when that might come, or if it might come, and just, because I think it provides a little bit of clarity, because I kind of see these as, a superpower. And it's the old fire hose behind the glass, that you're going to break the glass when you need it. But I think spelling out some of these initiatives in black and white takes away a lot of hesitancy. And yeah, they'll be in a drawer, and they're there, and if we need to use them, we will use them. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
So what is your question?
So, okay, so my question is, like, do we make suggestions to you, or are you going to say, hey, I've read through this, you alluded to the HR, that's something you've had a discussion. So do you make a motion, or mayoral decision that this is what I'm going to do? That would be my question on those 3 things.
Okay.
Yeah,
By the end of the week,
okay,
my decisions will be posted,
okay,
okay?
okay.
And
Perfect.
I have been listening to people,
Okay.
to council specifically, and I have had conversations with the CAO, and so I will post those by the end of the week.
Fantastic.
The clerk will post them
Okay.
by the end of the week,
Okay,
okay?
thank you, yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. Through you to the CEO, just to clarify, there is a possibility for public engagement should a councillor bring forward a motion to perhaps rescind or revoke these powers. I believe there should be that availability. I mean, we're going to be hearing from people, I'm sure, some people in favor and some people maybe not in favor, but I know not all municipalities are in favor of it, and the province, they may or may not listen, that's up to them. And these powers are relatively new since, prior to the last election, so we're not really sure what's going to happen after the next election when new mayors come into power and perhaps shake the boxes to which they're playing, the sandboxes in they're playing with. So there is that possibility, is there not?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. Councillor, I'll take you back to slides 7 and 8. You can't revoke. So initially you asked around, revoking. There is no revoking. And any motion which is purely political in nature that council may pass, saying we don't want them, we don't like them, whatever the wording of that is, really is non-binding.
No.
So
I'm aware of that.
slide 7 and 8. Should council itself want to engage with your residents and your constituents, and you get some feedback and you want to channel that feedback back to the mayor or your colleagues, I leave that to council.
Yeah.
But that isn't a formal engagement process that as staff we are either recommending or suggesting we put time or resources towards. But again, if a councilor wants to go out and engage, as you do on a number of things, a number of councilors do engage, whether it be on developments or other sorts of things, then I would suggest, yeah, this doesn't prohibit you. But I go back to slides 7 and 8 that talk about the revocability and the binding nature.
Yeah, but through you, like I mentioned, like some municipalities they're saying thanks but no thanks, and they're choosing not to use them. Because it's, in the hands of the wrong people, it could be a real problem. And we don't really know that now, but perhaps next election, who knows who's going to run and for what reasons. So that's the fear I have with this, the unknown down the road. Thank you.
I have no other questions right now. So let me just have a look at the agenda. If there aren't any more questions, then I do have a motion to receive and file the presentation, and the motion is going to be moved by Councillor Pachariva. Councillor, you okay with that? Okay. Madam Clerk, would you please open the vote?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That is now open for voting. Councillor Rajima, may I have your vote?
In favor.
Thank you, in favor. Councillor Murray, may I have your vote, please?
In favor.
In favor, thank you.
In favor.
In favor, thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'll close that, and that carries. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. All right, let me just look ahead here. So we have no need for the closed session, so that was a very good job on everybody's behalf. And there are no, I have a motion moved by Councillor Mikulik.
Not necessary for right here now.
All right, so we don't have this one either. Okay, so now we're at item number 6, which is committee remarks. Any further comments, councillors? All right, we'll move on then to item number 7, which is adjournment. There being no further business, I call this meeting adjourned at 18:26 hours. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, staff.